I've been a technologist my whole career, and I've watched the rise of the personal computer industry from the very first Apple IIs and TRS-80s all the way to the rise of the internet and now the rise of AI. And all this time, I've been a serious technology optimist. For me, even as an 11-year-old kid, technology was the stuff of science fiction. It was the stuff that put people on other planets and sent people to the stars. And so I've always had a very optimistic view of technology. I want that to inform what I'm about to share with you because it can seem that I'm very starry-eyed at times about technology. And I know that, especially when we're talking about artificial intelligence, not everybody agrees. Some people are very skeptical of the technology and afraid of what artificial intelligence might portend for our society. For my own part, I'm constantly learning about the technology and I'm starting to use it for all kinds of tasks in my life, including planning my day, including coding, including researching topics that I have interest in, including just looking up things I've always wondered about, but you can't really Google because it's like, yeah, there's this song with this snatch of lyric or like this thing. The artificial intelligence that's emerging now lets you do things we could never do before and lets you dive deeply into things at your own pace. And as a lifelong learner, that's been super important to me. It's like having a coach and a trainer that will go any direction you want it to go, but you have to learn how to steer it. I'm also aware that there's very big changes coming from AI. It's really going to touch all of our lives. It's going to change how we work. It's going to change how we play. It's going to change how we live. And I've been thinking a lot about this. And so in this video, I want to share with you one small technique I've been using to study using AI. And then I want to reason through some statements that the AI wrote, some of which I agree with, and some of which I have my own thoughts about. So the technique is something I call the 10 aphorisms. And what is an aphorism? An aphorism is a concise, memorable statement that expresses a general truth or moral principle. You can think of aphorisms as wise sayings. And how I prompt the AI, whether it's Claude or ChatGPT or whatever, I will tell it, write 10 aphorisms that capture the essence of whatever the subject is that I want to know about. For instance, a while back I asked it to write 10 aphorisms on Sun Tzu's The Art of War, a book I read many years ago, but I like to review this information. And because what the AI generates has a certain random element to it, you don't know exactly what you're going to get, but how you prompt the AI conditions its response. So it's always going to take what you're giving it, what you're asking it, as well as any other conversation you had with it, as well as all the training it's undergone into consideration in its response. So it wrote 10 aphorisms. In this case, the first one was know your enemy and know yourself, and you can fight 100 battles without disaster. You know, again, great wisdom. All warfare is based on deception. Okay, that's interesting to think about. Supreme excellence consists in breaking the enemy's resistance without fighting. This is the essence of Sun Tzu. And if you go on and read the other 8 or 9, you'll see that this is all in line with it. I've done this for many things, different philosophers, different educators I admire, different technologists. You can ask it for 10 aphorisms on anything, and sometimes it's a bit off, but very often it really gets it right. It really gets the essence of it right, and it's a great way to kind of review, remind yourself what you already know, or touch a topic you've never touched before. So recently I asked it to write 10 aphorisms that capture the essence of understanding and adapting to the advent and rise of modern artificial intelligence, a topic I'm very interested in. And I asked Claude 3, Opus, the current top-of-the-line model that is one of the ones I use for almost everything now. I also use ChatGPT 4 a lot, and these are the answers it gave. And in this video, we're going to go into each answer, and I'm going to, go into why I think I agree or disagree with each of these aphorisms. So the first one is embrace the change, for resistance is futile in the face of an AI-driven future. And when you think about it, this actually sounds a bit threatening. In fact, if I go back to my question, how I phrased my question, I said, write 10 aphorisms that capture the essence of understanding and adapting to the advent and rise of modern artificial intelligence. Think about the way I framed the question. I didn't ask whether artificial intelligence was going to rise, was going to become dominant in our society. It's assumed in my question. When you write a prompt for artificial intelligence, you are conditioning its responses. Artificial intelligence's large language models will sometimes refuse. They'll say, I can't talk about that. I don't feel comfortable with that. That's all the guardrails that have been placed on it. But generally speaking, it's very important to realize that every word of your prompt matters when you write a question or a prompt for an AI. In this case, look at my assumptions. I want the essence of understanding and adapting. So I'm assuming that you're going to have to adapt to the advent and rise, so I'm assuming it's going to rise, of modern artificial intelligence. So take that on board when you actually look at the answers it's giving. And in this case, it says, embrace the change, for resistance is futile in the face of an AI-driven future. Resistance is futile sounds a bit threatening. It sounds a bit like the Borg. You will be assimilated. But I think it's just a fact. Because first of all, I think slowing down is actually impossible. The genie's out of the bottle. The technology is understood globally. Yes, there are some very bright minds working on it in some very well-funded companies, but really everybody is learning how to use and understand this technology now, and also how to advance it. There are a number of voices that have wanted to slow down or silo the development of artificial intelligence, but I really don't think that's possible, and I really don't think it's advisable either. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second, but slowing down really isn't possible. There's too much profit motive, there's too much military motive, there's too much human potential motive. This could really change everything in our lives, including medicine, business, longevity, all kinds of things that can directly impact our quality of life. There's a lot of money to be made, but that's not all. There's a lot of real improvement in the human condition that this technology is going to make possible, I think. Is it possible bad things will happen too? I think it's inevitable that bad things will happen too. But I think you have to look at the fact that every single technological revolution has had good things and bad things, but on net, when you look at human history, then it's always been a net improvement. Some might differ with that. That's my opinion. And I think there's a fair amount of evidence to bear that out. Some people think that we should silo AI inside the biggest corporations, the brightest minds, and it should never see the light of day until it's perfectly safe. Well, I don't think that's possible, and I also don't think it's advisable. I'll probably do another video about this, but just in short, there's too many actors with divergent interests around the world, governments, well-resourced corporations, individuals, and so on, who want AI for themselves, and so they're going to make this happen. And what do you and I, the little people, do in light of this? We're going to talk about that in a moment. So let's go to the next aphorism. Adapt or be left behind. The pace of AI waits for no one. Okay, again, this sounds a bit threatening, right? Left behind. Nobody wants to be left behind. Don't leave me behind. Well, the fact is, we are a very adaptable species. Throughout all of Earth's history, humans have been so successful because we can adapt. We can live in all kinds of climates, and we adapt to technology as it comes our way. But some people feel like, well, they can refuse. They can just sit down the trail and say, I'm not going to adapt to this. Again, unless you're just about to check out, then you will be called upon to adapt. This might mean that your job may go away. And this is something that people feel seriously threatened by, that AI is going to take my job. And in fact, AI seems to be threatening the jobs of creative people like writers or technologists like me, coders. I mean, I'm using AI to write a lot of code now. It's writing a good chunk of the code. Now, I'm directing it from a much higher level. In some ways, I feel like I'm actually a metacoder now. I'm not just writing every line of code, I'm directing. I'm like the conductor of a symphony. And it's writing a lot of the detailed code. I'm still having to correct it. I'm still having to work with it. I'm still having to impress upon it my vision. Will it get to the point where I don't even have to do that? Maybe, probably, at some point. But I think that, again, that means that we will be able to adapt again and get to even higher levels of abstraction and work on an even higher level. And I'll talk more about that in a minute. But what's happening with AI is bigger than the internet. It's bigger than the rise of computers. It's bigger than the rise of electricity. Now, it depends on all those things, but I think ultimately it's going to have a bigger impact on humanity. Governments, big tech, tech entrepreneurs are all reorienting right now to AI. And so the only solution that can lead to a new equilibrium is widely distributed open source AI. This is why it can't be siloed. This is why it can't be kept under wraps. It actually has to be distributed to you, to me, to everybody in a way that we know that we control it, that it's not controlled by somebody else. It's not the Neuralink in your mind that's controlling you. You are controlling it. Just like you drive your car, just like you control your car, just like when you open a door, it opens. We need to have that level of confidence in it. And the only way we're going to have that level of confidence is if we know we control it. The next aphorism is, in the age of AI, lifelong learning is no longer a choice, but a necessity. And this one is, I think, probably my favorite because I've always been a self-directed learner. Since my youngest years, I actually hated school. I actually learned much better outside of school. That's where I learned computers. That's where I learned technology, outside of school. My school didn't even have a computer. I actually ended up teaching a class in computer programming to my classmates because the school didn't have a computer. I took us all to one of the very first computer stores in LA, and I started teaching them about what I was learning about computers. Yeah, they made fun of me, but I still had fun. This is going to happen very quickly. And sitting this out is not going to be an option. So you really need to understand how this technology is developing and learn how to make it work for you. And so therefore, you're going to have to take it upon yourself to start learning more and more. And not just the technology itself, but more and more life skills that help you leverage the technology. Revolutionary technologies like agriculture or automobiles or electricity have always required people to learn new skills. This is no different, but it's happening very fast. So become a lifelong learner. Adapt to this technology by expanding your view of what your life could be. I know self-directed learning doesn't come as easily to everyone. And sure, there are online courses that you can take to learn how to use AI more effectively and to do what you would do, to learn what it can do. As I've always said, there's no excuse for not learning something you want to know. And believe me, you want to know about this stuff. The tools themselves can now be your mentor. You can even say, I'm interested in this topic, whatever it is, but I have no idea where to start. Where do I start? And ChatGPT or Claude or whatever will tell you where to start. You can have it outline a whole curriculum for you. You can have it recommend books. You can tell it, I don't know what I'm doing here. Help me. And it will. It's actually pretty amazing that it will adapt. Number 4, the future belongs to those who can harness the power of AI, not fear it. And this is not exactly a repeat of the last one. It has some elements of it because it's about harnessing the power of AI. But the most important element here, I think, is the element of fear. A lot of people fear AI. If you know about Dune, you maybe seen the Dune movies or whatever. Frank Herbert said, fear is the mind killer. And we're dealing with a whole new category of mind here. And you don't want to let your fear kill your mind when a new kind of mind, an extension to our mind, is now starting to emerge. It does make sense to proceed with due caution. As I mentioned before, electricity, autos, every new technology entails risks. Electricity, people get electrocuted. Automobiles, some people get hit. These are penalties that society pays. But people have always died through accidents. There's always been upheavals when it comes to technology. Living entails risk, and this kind of technology is no different. So you shouldn't put it in a separate category. And I'll talk in a minute about why I think that it's not as extraordinary a risk as some people make it out to be. My favorite definition of courage is feeling fear and moving forward regardless. So I'm not saying you shouldn't be apprehensive, but think of this as an opportunity. It's okay to have butterflies in the stomach. It's okay to feel like, yeah, things could change very fast. Work up your courage, because this is actually, I think, one of the most exciting times to be alive. There's no other time I would choose to be alive than right now. And again, if we can decentralize AI, that is open source AI, more and more compute in your pocket, that you're directly connected to in various ways, either through your screen and keyboard or through your eyes, and ears or whatever, will make a huge difference in how you can harness this power. There are tools coming out now which are a pin you wear. There are tools now which are a small handheld device you just talk to and it talks back. There are going to be devices where you can talk to them and then it will use your computer at home to do various kinds of things. Learning about the space, learning about the AI space and the direction it's moving in, particularly AI agents that are like your little minions from Despicable Me that will go out and do what you want them to do, hopefully competently, and come back and tell you what they did. And that's going to be a huge game changer for everybody. Number 5, AI is not a replacement for human intelligence, but rather an extension of it. This is also, I think, my other favorite one, because there are a lot of fears that AI will make humans obsolete. But I don't think that's likely if we adapt to AI as it emerges. It's really not a choice of whether we get replaced by AI, but whether or not we choose to use it as an extension of ourselves. Cars extend your body. You can't run very fast, but you can drive far faster than you can run. You can't know everything, but the internet extends your mind and lets you communicate with anyone in the whole world. AI is also an extension of our minds. It is an emerging tool for thought. Think of it as like a new wing of your brain just opened that you can now walk into. It's got a huge library in there. It's got people who are ready to help you remember, know, or create anything that you want more effectively. It's truly an extension of human thought. So when you think of it as just another tool, but a tool that gives you enormously powerful capabilities, then you can actually embrace it and not feel like you're going to be replaced by it, but it's actually going to make you better. Number 6, the most valuable skill in the era of AI is the ability to ask the right questions. Well, I guess I have 3 favorites at least, because this one I completely agree with as well. Because learning how to learn is, I think, one of the most essential life skills. Knowing how to read is good. Knowing how to use a library, that's incredibly powerful, because then you can go find out more of what you want to know about things. That was an essential skill for me growing up, is knowing how to use my local public library. As the internet rose to prominence, learning how to find what I wanted quickly on the internet became one of my most valuable skills. Again, as a self-learner, it helped me go in all kinds of directions I wanted to go without feeling like somebody was feeding me a curriculum. And it's basically helped me find my niche in my career as a technologist. So when you learn to use a hand tool, when somebody gives you a hammer, they have to show you how to hold it to get the right results. So how you prompt or direct AIs is the most important thing to getting useful results. And so this is, again, learning how to learn. In this case, this is learning how to direct artificial intelligence. So one of the most exciting emerging fields is called prompt engineering. It's basically learning how to talk to AIs such that they give the information that you want back. There are some very general techniques. In fact, this whole video was created by a form of prompt engineering, where I said, write 10 aphorisms on artificial intelligence and adapting to that. And that right there was a form of prompt I use. I engineered that prompt for my own purposes, and I put it to use in a number of different areas, including helping me make this video. So having a broad general knowledge is another key to unlocking the vast space of knowledge inside AI models. AI models have studied the whole internet. They've studied the great literature of mankind. They have a huge amount of knowledge locked inside them. And so knowing how to unlock the knowledge in that what's called latent space of models is going to become an incredibly important skill. And how do you get that skill? You practice. You ask questions, and then you read the answers, and then you raise more questions based on that. You ask it to expand upon what it's answered. You ask it to go off on tangents. You throw it random things or things that might only seem tangential, and you ask if it understands how it relates to that. And often it gets it right. It can actually draw connections between things that seem unrelated. And that's great, because that actually helps you explore your own mind. And one of the other major cornerstones of working with artificial intelligence is critical thinking, which is one of my big deals. So it's essentially the practice of learning to ask good questions, learning to ask good questions and evaluate the answers in the light of evidence and reason. That's a big part of what I talk about on this channel. So don't forget to like and subscribe if you like this video. When you get answers back from AIs, whether they are works of art that you have, say, DALL-E draw, or whether it's a factual answer to something or historical, it's still on you to verify what you learn. And so you can never give up critical thinking. I even wonder why people make a big deal about this with regard to AI, because do we trust everything anybody tells us? Well, why should we trust everything that AI tells us? Generally, you should be critical and skeptical about what people tell you. And I don't mean so that you just reject everything. I don't mean a form of cynical skepticism. I mean being willing to believe if the evidence and reason warrant it. And so you should be able to cross-check things. You should be able to double-check things. You shouldn't just blurt out anything an AI told you as if it's fact, unless you have very good reason to believe, based on everything else you know, that it's true. And then you should always feel free to go and cross-check it. I don't think we're ever going to come up with AIs that always get it right. That is, again, some people say we shouldn't even have AIs until they'll always get it right, until they never make a mistake, until they never say anything wrong or possibly offensive or whatever. Never going to happen. That's not how the technology works. That's not how our brains work. In fact, as a kid, I just wish I could find the source of this. And so far, AI hasn't been able to tell me. So if anybody sees this and knows the source of this, let me know. But as a kid, I remember reading something. Maybe it was Marvin Minsky, one of the pioneers of AI or whatever. But what I read was something to the effect of, if we ever have machines that can think as well as humans, they will be as inscrutable as humans in terms of their thinking. And when I explain to you why I did something or what my reasons were, yeah, it could be plausible, but people make stuff up. People fill in gaps. That's called confabulation. A lot of times with computers, with large language models, it's called hallucination. But the idea is that when you discover that you don't always understand yourself, you fill it in with something plausible. And it might be true, but we actually have done enough research to know that we can't say we know it's true, because a lot of our thoughts, a lot of our impulses, they arise unbidden from lower levels of our consciousness. And the same is going to be true with large language models. That doesn't mean they're not useful, because humans are useful. I can be useful to you. I can teach you things. You can be useful to me. You can help me with various things. You have to look at these emerging intelligences like we look at human beings. Very intelligent human beings in some cases, very useful in some cases, very different from human beings in some cases. But again, you cannot check your brain at the door. You cannot give up critical thinking. Also, having good language skills is really important. Knowing the subtleties of language, reading a lot, knowing how to write, knowing how to ask questions in concise ways, in specific ways. These are all good language skills to have. But if you hear this and you despair and you say, oh my God, I don't have very good language skills. I'm not a great talker. I'm not a great thinker. I'm not a great writer. That's okay, because AIs will also adapt to you. One of my favorite prompting techniques is, again, this is prompt engineering, and I use it a lot, is to tell it to explain it like I'm 5. I'll ask it for information on a topic, and it will talk a couple levels above me sometimes. And I'll say, explain it like I'm 5. And it will actually stop it back and explain it in terms of toys or candy or whatever. But often it gives me some hooks to then start asking more intelligent questions about it. One of the amazing things about this technology is how it will adapt to your current level of understanding. You basically just have to tell it what your level of understanding is, and it will adapt. It will adapt its answers to you. 7. AI is a tool, and like any tool, its impact depends upon the hand that wields it. And this is close to my heart as well, because I've always said a hammer is just a tool. You can use it to build a house, or you can use it to kill a man. And so AI is also just a tool. Some people will try to use it for bad things. That's kind of inevitable. People have been killed with hammers. And we're never going to get to a point where AI is totally safe. It's never going to be a Nerf ball. It's always going to be a tool that can be used for good or bad. And some people will always attempt to use it for, well, at least things you or I think are bad. And what do we do about that? When in fact, some people have gone so far as to say, it's like handing everybody on Earth a nuclear bomb. If it's so hyper intelligent, it can almost do anything. It can turn the whole world into paper clips or something like that. Somebody's going to use it for that. Somebody's going to tell it to do something that destroys the rest of us. And I don't doubt that if that were true, somebody would. But I don't think it's true. I'll tell you why. And again, this probably deserves a whole video to itself. But if it's that spectacularly intelligent, as to be compared to a nuclear bomb, and you give one to everybody, it's not just you give everybody a nuclear bomb, unless you also grant that it's like a super bomb detector and diffuser. So if everybody had a nuclear bomb, but anytime I tried to push that button, everybody else on Earth stopped me because they had their own super nuclear bomb detector and diffuser, then that's an equilibrium. That basically means that, yeah, I might be able to build a nuclear bomb, but if you've ever seen Mars Attacks, the movie where Martians come to the Earth, they literally smoke a nuclear bomb, launch at them by Earth. It's like that, because if you have that kind of powerful technology that can destroy things, it can also protect you. And I think this is what's going to happen with AI, is if it's decentralized and open source and made widely available, then you will have AI agents protecting you and your interests, because that's all they're there to do, and you know that they're on your side. And other people, yes, will be trying to attack you with them, because now we have that. We have people now using AI to imitate the voices of your friends and family. I had one of the elderly people in my family called by somebody saying that my son had been in an automobile accident and asking for money. They weren't even using one of these AI voices now, but this is actually happening now, where people will fake a person's voice. If the kid is a YouTuber or whatever, or take my voice, you can fake my voice and you can make a call. Well, I've already set up things like with my friends and family. I have questions that I will ask them or they will ask me to know that it's them and me. You have to have ways of doing these things, because you cannot trust the mere fact that it's somebody's voice that seems familiar to you anymore. And these are just skills, life skills that we're going to have soon. Like, don't hand somebody your credit card and let them do anything they want with it. Some people who believe in AI safety believe that we can eventually find AI or make AI that has guardrails on it where it can't do anything unsafe, but that's never going to hold, because uncensored, no guardrails AI models are always going to be more useful for certain things, and so therefore they're going to proliferate, because I may have perfectly valid reasons for asking an AI how to break into a car or something like that, which is a standard question people ask AI models to see what the guardrails are like. And you might even be able to assure them, yeah, I'm just writing a movie script. And maybe you are writing a movie script about somebody breaking into a car and you want it to be realistic, so you want to know how it's done. Or maybe you are designing cars and want to know how to make cars more resistant from being broken into. There's all kinds of reasons why so-called forbidden knowledge shouldn't actually be forbidden. Knowledge wants to be free. And people will attempt to use it for bad things, but knowing that actually is the best defense against it, is knowing that people use knowledge to try to do bad things. People also who want the world to be better, and there are many more of those people out there, will use it to protect you against those things. And you need to learn how to use it to protect you against those things. So widely distributed, decentralized AI is, I believe, the only path to a new equilibrium here. Don't just leave it in the hands of the experts. Don't hand it just to the government or to governments of the world. Don't just let it be in the silos of research labs and very large big tech corporations. You should be lobbying to make it as widely available, and decentralized as possible. 8. The rise of AI is not about machines becoming more human, but also about humans becoming more humane. Well, this is a feel-good thing. And to me, this actually feels like something of a platitude. So I know I've agreed with a lot of these aphorisms so far, but this feels a little bit smarmy to me. Humans have long distinguished ourselves from other life forms in that we use language to think. So we're inventing AI in our own image. So it is about machines becoming more human. The more we get machines to do human-like things, in a sense, the more human they are. The rise of AI is not about machines becoming more human, but about humans becoming more humane. So it's about both. It's about both. Humans have always had reasons to become more humane to each other. And indeed, humanity as a whole has become more humane to each other over the course of history, especially as we've had less and less reason to fight, more and more reason to trade, more and more reason to understand each other. As language barriers have fallen, then we tend to want to cooperate because that actually creates win-win scenarios rather than win-lose scenarios. So the rise of AI will lead us to more deeply question what it means to be human. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that we should be asking ourselves these questions anyway, and AI will push that. And I think that that's something that we should all be asking ourselves. And here's one thing that I think is super important. Not all humans want to be humane. We always have to be careful about bad actors. In our society, there are psychopaths, there are narcissists, there are disordered individuals who will game any system where they believe they can get power. And any human system needs to be resilient against such people. You can't prevent them from existing. There's actually, in some cases, good evolutionary reasons why narcissists and psychopaths exist. But if left unchecked, they can be a real problem. And I think, unfortunately, what we see in a lot of our governments right now is we have a psychopathocracy in many cases now. But again, I think the way to balance that is by humanity as a whole raising our level of intelligence, raising our level of understanding, raising our level of awareness of these kinds of things. Not trusting blindly, but learning who to trust and doing it wisely. And I think this is something that AI can help us a lot with. And that will extend what it means for us to be human. 9. In a world of artificial intelligence, emotional intelligence becomes the true differentiator. All right, well, again, this feels a bit like a feel-good platitude to me. It emphasizes the importance of feeling like, well, I'm still human, and that's good because I'm different from AI. Yeah, we are going to be different from AI, no matter what. AI, yes, it's studied all of humanity, but AI agents and so on aren't going to have the same ways of thinking, ways of feeling, if they can ever be said to feel anything, that humans do. We are different from them, just like I'm different from my car. I'm trying to remember the book it was years ago where somebody talked about how turn signals are facial expressions on a car. Does a car have consciousness? Does a car have emotions? Well, no, not like you and I do. In some sense, people who study cybernetic systems like thermostats and so on, or computers, which are very complex cybernetic systems, talk about how there's, they take information, they process the information, and they react to that information in a loop. Well, we do that too. And artificial intelligences are going to do that too. Right now, the state of the art is what we call one-shot learning, where you just tell it what you want and you get back the answer. But in the next year or two, you're going to see the rise of what's called agentic learning, where there's a loop going, where you give it a high-level goal, and then it actually thinks it through, maybe even thinks it through using several different models, comes up with a plan, executes the plan. Hopefully it passes it by you first if there's anything questionable about it. Obviously, you don't want to hand it your credit card without good reason to. But whether or not emotional intelligence is going to become the true differentiator, well, I've noticed that as AI is becoming better at analytical tasks, it also seems to be getting better at understanding humans, our emotions, and the human condition. You can ask, Claude is the best at this right now. OpenAI's ChatGPT-4 is still really good, but you can actually have some fairly deep emotional conversations with these devices, with these large language models, where you can tell it about things you've been through, and you will almost feel like there's empathy coming through it. Now, I don't think that there is, not in the way humans understand, but you have to understand that they call them large language models because they build a model of everything they've learned. That's kind of what we do. My mind, my brain, everything in my head, inside my skull, is a model of the outside world. It's a model of you, the viewer. It's a model of the computer in front of me. It's the model of my home and my career and my loved ones and all that. I have a model of those things. They aren't those things themselves. They're how I think of those things. And also, I have a model of my own emotions. I feel, but I think about my feelings. The large language model may not be able to feel things the way you can, but on some level, I think that the model in it is good enough that the responses it gives can actually be relatable. and then that makes them useful. So AI is going to become a very useful tool for mental health, because it's going to be something where people who need confidential counseling of some kind will be able to talk to an AI off the record, even something on their device that they control, that will actually give them really good advice. It will also help us understand each other better. There'll be moderators between people who have disputes and things like that. But we have to use it with that intent, with the intent of helping understand ourselves better, with the intent of understanding other people better. I think the deepest question here is, how will AI help us become better as humans, including increasing our emotional intelligence? 10. The advent of AI is not the end of human ingenuity, but the beginning of a new era of collaboration between man and machine. So, again, I agree and disagree with this. I think that the dichotomy, as I've mentioned earlier, between man and machine is really kind of a false dichotomy, because, in a sense, humans have always been our machines, and our machines are us. My car, when I'm driving it, extends my body. My computer extends my mind. If we see AI as somehow other than us, then we will find it alienating. If we see it as this weird alien thing that doesn't think like us, it doesn't reason like us, it doesn't believe like us, it's not human, especially if we project onto it our conceptions of how AI, like in the Terminator, brings about the end of humanity, then we're going to find it alienating. But that's one frame that you can put around AI. If we see AI as actually extending us, then AI will extend our ingenuity, our ability to create value, and help us solve humanity's great problems. And that's one of the things that excites me the most about this. So if you appreciated this video, be sure to like it, share it, subscribe to my channel, and let me know what you thought about it in the comments. Also, check out my software for strategic planning and critical thinking at flyinglogic.com. See you next time.